Yo, 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 what's up, folks? Welcome to episode 23 of Blow and Win with the Great Southern Brain Fart. Thank you all so much for your kind words of support that you've given me since launching this podcast in January. I have had an absolute blast talking to everybody that I've talked to, and I'm so glad to hear that you all have been enjoying it as well. For this episode, thrash metal guitar legend, blogger, jazz master, and cat lover. These are all things that pretty much encompass the man you are about to hear me talking to. Better known for his work as Testament's lead guitarist, Alex Skolnick has done everything from jazz albums to playing with Ozzy and his current project, Metal Allegiance. Alex took some time out of his hectic schedule to talk to me, and it was a real honor to talk to him. He's a great guy to talk to, and I really enjoyed everything he had to say, and I am proud to welcome Alex Skolnick to Blow and Wind with the Great Southern Brain Fart. Can you dig it? I think you can. Alex Skolnick, welcome to Blow and Win with the Great Southern Brain Fart.
Thank you. Great name.
Oh, thank you so much. I wish some of the other musicians thought the same too, because I just actually got told that a musician wouldn't talk to a website that was called the Great Southern Brain Fart, and so I told him, I said,
because you had the word fart in it.
Well, yeah, I was like, well, I'm sorry if that was such a judging a book by its cover, but hey, tell him sorry. I'm not going to change the name for him. And before I get started, I also have to tell you that a good friend of mine told me to tell you hi, Catherine Turman.
Oh, cool. Miss T.
Oh, yeah, Kit Kat. She's like one of my favorites. So
she's awesome.
You guys are like cat buddies, apparently.
Yeah. She's a cat queen.
Oh, she totally is. And apparently you're a cat king.
Yeah, that had happened a couple years ago. I just held on to a rescue cat for a few days, a kitten, and couldn't give her up. So, so she's a great cat, and then I've bonded with a bunch of my cat owning friends, including Cat Sherman.
So are you going to become one of those crazy cat men, because they do exist?
Yeah, I only have one. I have no plans to expand. But you never know.
More than two is I think is where you kind of go into the crazy mode, So
yeah, exactly.
Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you, Alex. I've been a fan of yours, obviously, for years. I mean, since I was a teenager. I don't mean to make you feel old, but I'm 44 now.
That's all right. That's all right. I'm not that far behind you.
But, the first time I heard, the first time I ever saw the video for Over the Wall, I think like most kids my age, I was just like, how much fucking cooler can you get than like a thrash band running around Alcatraz? I was just like, that is just the shit, So.
Oh, that's so cool.
Well, so.
That's great.
What were you gonna say? What were you gonna say?
What's that?
I said, what were you gonna say?
Oh, just when we did things like that, like going in the studio to make a record. Doing a video, which is a very painstaking process, by the way, especially back then. You have no idea. You don't really get to experience, other people, the way other people experience those things. So, because you're in them. You see them from a certain vantage point, but it's always fun to hear these stories of, how somebody, discovered your record in a record store or saw the video on MTV or, whatever it may be.
I mean, because it really is. Because I mean, the times have changed so much. Because back in the day when when I was a kid, it was MTV and Headbangers Ball or Heavy Metal Mania at the time and whatnot. And when I saw that video, I just remember thinking like, that is the coolest shit in the world, But of course, like now that I'm older and I go back and I look at that and I go, now I know what the process of making a video was.
Sure.
What was it like being pretty much trapped in Alcatraz for hours, like making a video?
Well, actually, it was actually fun. We're all from the Bay Area. I live in New York now, but at the time, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've been there a few times. It's a little bit like, in New York, the Empire State Building. If you live there, you don't go to it. You just got to look at it. But then you have relatives or friends that come into town, and you go. And Alcatraz was always sort of like that, But it was great to have this excuse to go there and spend a lot of time there. And a whole bunch of friends of ours were involved with it. And, we were kind of stealth about it. I don't think we had the proper permits. So we would have to, we took a tour and then we would sort of sneak around corners and film a scene when nobody was looking. It's actually pretty amazing we pulled that off.
That's a great story because that was my next question was like, how the fuck did you get Alcatraz to yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was totally done guerrilla style.
As it should have been, like that first album was, right? I mean, really.
Absolutely. I mean, I've heard stories of, like Werner Herzog talks about his first films, and he actually stole a camera that he decided the commitment to art was justifying the theft. I think it was from his film school, and I forget the story, but it was a similar thing. I think he did his first few films without the right permits and sort of sneaking shots. But again, you just when you're starting out, you do what you can do as long as nobody gets hurt.
Exactly. Well, like I said, that was such an introduction, and again, I'm pretty sure most fans my age, that was their first introduction to Testament. And then, of course,
sure.
I grew with Testament all through the years, all the way, and then the Ritual, which was like an explosion for you guys. I just remembered being so proud of that record, where a lot of people, like some of the more diehard Testament fans, I remember thinking like they weren't so on top of it. Like looking back on that album yourself, like I mean, it's obvious it was a shift in the currents a little bit, but what is your impression looking back on that album 20 something years later?
I almost feel sorry to say, and hate to say it, but it's good. It's good.
It's one of my favorites, man.
The music is good. The melodies are good. The songwriting is good. The playing is good. I don't know what people's problem is with it. I mean, I think it would have been smarter politically to, knowing what I know now, to just have one like breakneck 500-mile-an-hour tune on there.
Just to kind of appease the people.
Just to appease people, yeah. Like one great fucking breakneck tune, I think would have solved the problem. I don't know, looking back, I would change that. I wish we had done that, but I think there was just such a desire to do something different. And the record before that had some great songs, but there was always a sense it was a bit rushed.
Right.
We were still. I've spoken about this. I've written about this. We were still getting our bearings in the music industry.
Right.
And I think we had not we could play, and we were a good band, but we just had not found ourselves yet as far as career moves, as far as PR, as far as production, all this stuff that it takes time to learn later on. And I was also the kid of the band. You know, I joined the band when I was 16.
Right.
I did the first when we did Over the Wall video. I was 18. Like I was just barely out of high school. And by the time we did the Ritual, I think I was 21 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was still a kid. And, you know, I started to get a sense about these things, but I wasn't able to speak up yet. And I think just knowing what I know now and just being able to read the audience and being able to, you know, to read the market and make changes that you want to make as an artist, but without alienating people.
Right.
But also not, you know, not compromising too much. You know, I kind of think like the relationship of a band and the audience it's a little like a marriage.
Right.
And you can, you know, at a certain point, you know, there's some bands that get to a point where they can do whatever the heck they want. You know, like Metallica can do Lulu with Lou Reed, right?
Unfortunately.
It's fine, though. It's fine because, you know, they're very you know, I know those guys. They're very smart. You know, they knew they could do that. They wanted to do it, but there's no way that, like, that next record, they can't, you know.
Right.
They come out with, the next one is Hardwired.
Right.
Right, that's a hell of a record. But if they had followed Lulu, like, say you reversed it, what if Hardwired had come out when Saint Anger did?
Right.
And then imagine, like, Saint Anger following Lulu.
It's like,
I think it would have hurt him. I think it would have, like, nothing can hurt them because they're just like, yeah, they're the Teflon band. The Napster controversy couldn't hurt them. Like, lawsuits, you know, whatever. But I think that would have done it. But no, they came out with this crushing record, Hardwired, and they came out with the record everybody wanted. After doing the record that, like, probably alienated more fans than any other thing they've done.
Which is so funny because then they could come back and headline and sell out stadiums. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, if I would have made a record like that, like my wife would have divorced me, you know?
Right.
Like, you know, like,
because they got to a point where you can do whatever the hell you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually wrote about it totally as an observer. And
right.
Of course, people are going to say, "Oh, it's the guy from Testament talking about the guy, the Metallica record." But, you know, I don't look at everything through the lens of the guy from Testament. And I thought it was really interesting what they did, and I do think, you know, with certain artists, they can do, you know, they get to a point and they can experiment and they can do whatever. It's rare, but, you know, like, you know, the Beatles could do Revolution 9, which is this insane piece of music.
Right.
That freaked everybody out. Although I think it actually makes sense. But I have a whole theory behind that. But later, John Lennon did the Two Virgins album, you know, which is just complete noise.
Yeah, exactly. This is so crazy.
Reed had done a record like that. That was just complete noise and sort of designed to piss off everyone. Neil Young did a record like that just to piss off his label. And even in the jazz world, yeah, Pat Metheny had a record called Zero Tolerance for Silence.
Oh, I remember that because I'm a Pat Metheny fan. Yeah.
You know what? They were all in positions where they could get away with doing something like that. Just to say, what would happen if I just do this thing? Nobody's going to get it. You know? But that's them. And it's rare. And I think, you know, when you're a newer band, getting back to Testament in the early 90s, you're a little more susceptible to your audience.
Right.
But at the same time, I think the Ritual has gotten more appreciated with time, not less.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I loved it when it came out because I was just old enough. It came out when I was a senior in high school. And like, when you're like 17, 18 years old, like that's that kind of turning point where you're not quite an adult, but you're not like
Right.
still taking anything that's being thrown at you. And I remember when that album came out, one of my first thoughts was like, wow, that's a bold fucking move. You know what I mean? Like I was like, that to me, that was as bold as going extreme, like what you were talking about. So like, that was my big argument with a lot of people, because I also wanted to touch base on what you said about how like, when you write, because I'm a big fan of, the skull notes and, your blog.
Thanks.
And
Cool.
I read that because what I love about that is that that's kind of how I write. I'm a musician, but I'm also, I'm not a journalist. I didn't go to school for this. I don't work for anyone. I do this out of passion. So I come at this as a fan from the outside looking in going, this is from my eyes. This is from my opinion.
Right.
So you can take it or leave it however you want, and I love your outlook on certain things, because it's like you said, like I can kind of hear here comes the guy from Testament again with a fucking opinion, and I'm thinking to myself like, no, it's not the guy from Testament. It's Alex Skolnick, the music fan, who has something to say, and I think that that's pretty fucking bold,
Thanks. Well, people, they see things through a limited lens sometimes. Even though, Testament it's just one side of what I do. I'm an all-around guitar player. I play with a lot of musicians that have nothing to do with the metal scene at all, especially, some of the great instrumentalists I work with. And I have a jazz guitar album coming out, which I may as well promote. Also September 7th. And
that's awesome.
That's
2 days
really
after that's 2 days after my birthday, man. I can't wait for that.
Yeah. And the same day the Metal Allegiance record comes out. So it's going to be a big month. That's all completely outside of Testament. But when I play with Testament, I give it 100%. But I guess it's the thing the most visible thing I'm doing. It's what I'm most known for. But it's really just one part of many things I do as a guitarist,
right?
And especially as a writer.
So with like the Metal Allegiance albums, I would imagine for you, being like you said, kind of like just like the all-around guitar player, that's got to be a fun project for you in the sense that I mean, obviously you guys take it seriously in the sense that it's well done and it's, tight and you guys have a great cast of characters, but that it's just kind of that it's like a project, that it's not something you've got to stress out like, okay, we've got to work out tour logistics and things like that. So is doing that a little more relaxing for you, or is it a little more tense sometimes?
I would not call it relaxing. I hate to burst your bubble.
It's not like the Skolnick trio.
No. And I wouldn't say that's not exactly relaxing, but it's the Skolnick trio. It's always it's low stress. You know what I mean? Like, right. It's whatever happens with it. It's fine. Me and the guys, Matt and Nathan, we laugh a lot. We're good friends. We haven't had a lot of drama. The releases, it's pretty simple. It's really just about music. And I think with Metal Allegiance, it's different than Testament, but it's high profile enough so that there is some stress involved because it gets a lot of press. It crosses over to because a lot of the musicians that we collaborate with, they have their own followings. And then it's like, okay, what do they think of it? Do they like it? And you know. So you're kind of, so it's just a lot. I wouldn't say it is fun. I wouldn't say it's overly stressful, but there's just a lot of moving parts. And it gets stressful when there is a deadline. Like, we know in order to come out this year, for example, the record has to be mixed and mastered by such and such a date, right? I forget what that was. I'm guessing it was like early spring. So, I mean, we're like talking, like not that long ago that we're kind of scrambling to button this up. And again, it's a lot of moving parts.
Dude, I can't even
vocalist on every album.
Oh,
every
yeah.
Song,
yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to imagine, because I'm scrambling around trying to get my band's album out, and like that's just like probably like a third or like an eighth of the stress that you guys go through to do it,
Yeah, and we have standards too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We're not gonna phone it in. Like, I really, if I'm gonna put my name on this record, like, I want to be proud of the record. I just can't put something out and go through the motions and say, especially if it's something like I'm heavily involved with. And on these records, the other thing, I mean, it not only makes it a little more stressful, but it also makes it more fun and a little more creatively satisfying. The fact that the type of guitar player, my role on this is it's a very deep role. Mm-hmm. Because I'm best known for Testament. Testament is part of this model of sort of the two guitarists, bass, drum, and lead singer model. Mm-hmm. AC/DC, for example.
Yeah,
right. That's a classic example of that model. And most of the heavy bands have been that style, or maybe it's four guys and one of them sings, right? Like Megadeth or Metallica.
There's usually some sort of like a two guitar thing going on,
Right. Anthrax, that's a more current example of that. So Anthrax is like another heavy band where you have a lead singer and you have two guitar players. Mm-hmm. So with Testament, really, Eric, for the longest time, has been like the Scott or the Malcolm Young of the band. And I was like the Angus Young.
Right.
Without
the schoolboy outfit.
Right. And that's true to a certain extent, but I've written a lot of the riffs, especially the early stuff. And the first couple records, we both played rhythm guitar. And Eric's developed as a soloist too. So we blur the lines a bit, but we're still a little closer to that model. Right. And with Metal Allegiance, it's really like the one guitar model. Right, like the Van Halen, Black Sabbath, Ozzy, Dio, right, where you have like one guy that does everything. So recording wise, I'm that guy. I'm doing all the riffs. I'm doing all the solos except for 3, where we have some great guests: Andreas Kisser, Nita Strauss, and Joe Satriani. Oh yeah, absolutely. Which is awesome. But for me, yeah, it's a lot more work. Mm-hmm. So I get to be that guy. And but it's nice. So you get to really hear my tone. Right. Yeah. Which you don't really hear on the record. Live, yes. Live, everybody's a riff guy. You go to see Metallica, Kirk is playing riffs just like James is. Right. Megadeth, Kiko is playing riffs just like Mustaine is. Mm-hmm. But in the studio, it's the other guys that you hear. And then the tone is really, it's that you hear is like a collect live. It's both guys. which is great. I mean, that's what makes it powerful. But I'll admit, I enjoy having this outlet to sort of be the guy just in charge of the tone and the riffs and everything. And it works for Metal Allegiance. I think, it's the one project that for me, I get to do that. But I wouldn't change anything about how Testament works. Eric's such a brilliant riff guy, and he's influenced how I play riffs. So I wouldn't change a thing about that. But I like, Metal Allegiance gives me this outlet to sort of be the Hetfield or the Vivian Campbell with Dio or the Randy Rhoads with Ozzy.
Exactly.
Doing the riffs as well as the solos.
Where you get to kind of wear both the hats and kind of say like, okay, this is what I'm going to do here, but then I'm also going to do this here. Whereas like you're like, okay, I wonder what he's going to do.
Exactly.
Well, so to kind of backstep just a little bit, like you were talking about the jazz album that's coming out on the 7th. Is that going to be with the Skolnick trio? Or is that going to be like a separate thing? Okay, great.
Yeah, it's the trio.
Because
first new album of originals, all originals. One arrangement of a classic French piano piece, but no covers, just all original compositions. Otherwise.
That's fantastic. So that's I mean, because the last one was, correct me if I'm wrong, was it Veritas in 11?
That was the last one, yeah.
Yeah,
I've been pretty busy at that time.
I mean, I've actually seen you with Testament like 4 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Testament's done a lot. Testament has done 2 records since that.
Yeah.
I did go back in the studio instrumentally, but I did a world music record called Planetary Collision.
Okay.
Which had a lot of moving parts, where I was using instrumental artists from all over the world and playing all acoustic guitar. And that was just a dream. I'd long wanted to do that record. So I dug in the studio and did that. And then Metal Allegiance happened.
Yeah.
And we did the first Metal Allegiance record, which had even more moving parts than this one. And that was a lot of work. So, yes, the trio is a little overdue for a record, but I was not going to let this year go by without doing one.
I think it's great though, because especially in New York City, the New York City jazz scene is such a such a tight-knit thing, especially starting in the 90s. I just recently interviewed a jazz singer out of New York who was in a band called Once Blue. Her name's Rebecca Martin. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but I'm
not familiar with her.
Yeah,
no.
So she used to play with Jesse Harris and Kurt Rosenwinkel and Ben Street and Jim Black and all those guys.
Those guys. Yeah, I know those names for sure.
Well, they were this band from the early 90s called Once Blue. And one of the things she was telling me was about like this kind of like the New York jazz scene is that there's definitely this kind of little pocket that seems to kind of be its own thing. So when you're doing the jazz trio, is it kind of like a comfort zone for you where you kind of feel like, okay, I'm no longer Alex Skolnick from Testament. Like I'm a jazz player and I'm kind of in this kind of a little more mellow of a bubble kind of. Does that make sense? I mean, do you kind of feel like basically like you've kind of switched continents of sorts? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I feel like yes. It's completely different. I mean, I'm playing with musicians there with totally different references and vantage points and different types of skills. They have a very different feel, which changes how I play. And I'm also playing. Usually, I'm playing different types of guitars. Mm-hmm. I'm usually playing, hollow body jazz instruments, or I'm playing one of my electrics, but with the settings more tuned for improvisation.
Right.
And then the back line is different. The amplification is different. The foot pedals are different. I use a lot of different sounds. I get a little bit experimental.
Yeah.
But I get to sort of tap into some of my influences that you might not hear when I'm playing with Testsament.
Right. And you get to set up your own gear.
You might not know. Well, there's that too. Yeah, but you might not know that I'm a fan of. Yeah, just to name one person, John Scofield.
Oh God,
yeah, just one of
I
my
love
favorite
Sco. He is amazing.
Yeah, amazing. And the stuff, his music is groovy. It's fun. It's quirky. And it's technically brilliant.
That stuff he did with Medeski, Martin, and Wood was like fucking outrageous.
Oh yeah,
it was so good.
So good, and you might hear that. If I played with the trio, there's parts you might say, "Oh, I can." I mean, obviously, I try not to copy him, but I might. I definitely tap into some of that influence.
Right.
And like picking close to the bridge and certain types of phrasing. Bill Frisell is another one. And yeah, maybe that will influence one of my ideas with Testament, but you're probably not going to hear it. It's not going to sound like that.
it might bleed in a little bit, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's not going to be as prevalent as, like you said, like as if you were in like your jazz form. So, well, real quick, I know you're going to have to go into this a little bit, but when I do my sign off, just hang on for just a quick minute so I can give you a proper goodbye and everything, if that's okay. So,
okay. Yeah, no problem.
But anyway, there's just a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about more before we head out. And one of them is kind of a big deal with me right now is this whole expression of politics in music by musicians in the press, as we've kind of seen a lot. And not to put, I don't want you to feel like I'm putting you on the spot, because if it's something don't want to talk about, that's cool. But like yesterday, there was a big release about Steve Zetro Souza, saying he was a Trump supporter, and
that
I know, and so it was one of those things where, like, I mean. There was a lot of back and forth between people on my blog about this, and a lot of people were just like, if you can't handle it, you're a fucking wuss, whatever. And other people, were just like, fuck. And my opinion was like, like anything, like if you wear political or fundamental beliefs on your sleeve, and you like openly and proudly stated, you kind of need to be prepared for what's gonna come your way, whether it be good or bad, and so like, what is your take on that? And I'm not saying for you to pick a side, I'm just saying, like, what's your take on that, if that makes sense?
Okay. I will give you an example. This week there is another podcast by Joe Rogan.
Yes.
And he has Henry Rollins on.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't heard the whole thing yet, but the part that I've listened to, they get into a big discussion about Ted Nugent. And apparently there was an idea to put them on the same show.
Oh, no.
I think that's a fascinating idea. But anyway, so Henry talks about how he's gotten into these conversations with Nugent about music, because Henry's a massive Nugent fan.
Correct.
Like,
right.
He thinks like that's as good as it gets. And then when he's had several conversations with him, and they go to music, and he's like, I like this guy. And then he'll hear, he'll see a clip from Nugent, appearing on Fox News on behalf of the NRA, and just saying something, just ridiculous, making like
just so like over the top,
obnoxious. Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting, but he says that he's able to make the separation, and the guy that he talks to about music is this great guy, and he thinks that, I mean, I would tell people to listen to the interview, but in the case of Nugent, for example, he's sort of, almost in this business now, as well as, being this legendary musician, of just the guy who says outrageous things.
Oh.
And there's a lot of people that there's now like a whole industry that thrives on that. And people for their, it can determine whether they get their next book deal,
Oh, it's crazy, dude. Whether or not someone's going to distribute your album, like whoever,
Yeah. So it becomes a question. It's like, okay, how much does that represent, the person themselves? So I know in the case of, the case of Zetro, I've known him a long time. He's a great guy.
Right. I've met him numerous times. And matter of fact, I was kind of shocked when I read that. I was like, that's not what I would have ever thought Zetro would be. I was like, come on, man. Really?
I know. And it seems like, okay, he was asked about it because I really think, for as long as I've known him, I've never discussed politics. I've never heard him discuss politics. And I would like to think that if if the issues were explained more in detail and the data was shown, and like
that we're privy to, from the real news.
Well, yes. For example, yes, the stock market is going through the roof, but that doesn't affect. So you can't judge the whole economy by that,
right?
And you can't judge wages by that. And yes, even the unemployment rate is high because people have to work so much harder just to survive.
Oh, right.
To have a survivable wage, and there's there is evidence of this, and I would like to think if presented with that evidence, it might have an effect. But who knows? And I just think, you're kind of going there. You're wading into a rabbit hole with a lot of these people, if you choose to debate. Mm-hmm. And I know there's some other musicians I can think of.
Oh, me too. There's plenty.
I don't want to I've seen their Facebook walls,
right?
And it's shocking to me.
Yeah.
And these are people I'm convinced that if they saw somebody fall down on the street, they'd be the first to help them up.
Right.
You know what I mean? These are not people I think of as bad people in any way.
Right.
And I'm just in shock that they've bought into that, the whole Fox News mentality, and just sort of parroting these talking points. And I don't know what to do about it, because you can't really argue. We've reached the point where people are convinced they have their own facts and their own truth, and Giuliani says truth isn't truth.
Well, and to quote Anthrax, it's like clapping with one hand. You know what I mean? Right. Like, it really is. It's like, it's like, you can dispute this all you want with them, but they're going to be right. You're going to be right. You're just going to cancel each other out. So at some point, you've just got to say, I'm either not going to fucking engage you, or I'm just going to get so mad that, my face turns red every time I see you,
Exactly.
Well, that's interesting. I'm glad that was interesting that you had that kind of point on it, though. So, but you yourself, as far as an individual, do you kind of foresee yourself as being one that likes to keep his political things to himself? And
no, not at all.
I didn't think so. I just wanted my listeners to hear that, actually, because I know you don't.
Oh yeah, no, I've gotten into it. I've kind of had it.
Well, you have to, because it's one of those things. We have learned this, and like you said, we're not far from age, but in age, but we've learned in our generation, especially as young people, is that it's that whole that whole thing, like, you know, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. You know, like you got to talk about it. You know.
Yeah, and I'm not Tom Morello. I'm not, like wearing my activism on my sleeve. But I'm also, not afraid to back down. Every once in a while, I'll do a post and just say, guys, this is not normal.
Right.
Like, the child separation policy, the ban on Muslim. I mean, I don't talk about it all the time, but once in a while, and boy, it always creates some big thing.
It does, because it's being talked about. It's not being swept under a rug.
Yeah, how are you? Yeah, and how are you going to just ignore this is what's going on in the world? It's a huge elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I tend to be more active on my Twitter, and tweets and replies, and I'll do, I'll sometimes interact with people, that I follow.
Right.
Like, I actually interviewed the journalist Sarah Kendzior, who's a big resistance leader and a friend of mine. I responded to the pundit Rick Wilson, which he just had this hilarious anti-Trump comment.
I did love that, by the way. That was great.
Yeah. So I have a great time. I try to have fun with it on Twitter. I found on Facebook I have to be careful. Like, Facebook is just a lot of very sensitive, supporters of what's going on.
I've kind of found that Twitter is kind of like the Underground Railroad of the internet. You know what I mean? It's like where we can kind of hang together, and like it's a little more secretive. Whereas Facebook, like, you'll get a comment from someone and you'll be like, I have no idea who you are. How did you even see this? You know what I mean? And you're like, oh shit, because it showed up in somebody's feed and they saw it. And I left my shit unblocked and they followed it, and you're like, yeah, this is not good. So. Well,
exactly.
Well, so let's end on a positive, happy note here instead of this. But so to close things out, are you going to tour? Or, I mean, are we going to see some more Testament in 2018 or going into 19? Are we going to see?
I think Testament we're thinking about new music. It's percolating.
Okay.
But I think, the goal is to have a record come out in 2019 by hook or by crook.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So that's happening. In the meantime, Metal Allegiance has these these few, the shows are few, but they're big events, so they're really exciting.
They're huge. They're actually, they're eventful. Yeah.
And we're looking into a few more of those. So that should happen. And then the trio has album release shows all over the country, and a swing through Texas, where we haven't been in a number of years.
Oh, and I'd love to see you guys down. Exciting. I'd love to see you guys down here in Atlanta. You'd be surprised. Atlanta's got quite a little jazz scene, man. Atlanta's got quite a little jazz thing going on. Man.
I know. There's some great musicians down there. We're overdue. So I'm waiting for my schedule to solidify, but I could see us getting there, within the next few months.
That would be fantastic. Well, definitely keep me posted, man, so I can, spread the word and advertise for you and get it all out for you, because I'd love to see a trio show. Mm-hmm. I've got all the albums, man. I absolutely love them. So they're, it's fantastic. It's great listening. So
thanks, man. Well, I hope you like the new one. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to hear it, and I'm so glad I had the opportunity to talk with you, Alex. And it's been a long time coming, and I appreciate your time, man, so much.
All right. My pleasure.
Well, best of luck with everything, and hope to talk to you soon.
You got it.
All right, thanks.
See you later.
Bye.